So I'm here, Councilmember Dole is here, and Councilmember Ishmael should be here shortly. We'll go to reports and presentations. Chief Parkinson.
All right, so you should have my monthly Chiefs report with call stats that we sent out. The only thing of significance. There we go. You'll notice on page 2, if you happen to track what our average response times were, dropped by about a minute, that we have a different data analyst. That person did a good data cleanup to make sure that we weren't travel time. That gets us back to where we've historically been, which is 7.5 minute average response time throughout the entire district. So regardless of whether that's in Fairfax or in averaged out between that and the call that's across the street from. Besides that, nothing of significance in the stats this month. Just other items. COVID itself, nothing new. Fairly status quo as far as the whole COVID topic. As far as the vaccine mandate, as of headed to this meeting, we have had our last employee fall into compliance, so that gets us 100% compliant with the state proclamation. So that's a nice spot to be that we're actually there a few days ahead of time. We had some meetings blocked out for the 18th.
Is that for vaccinations and exemptions type deal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Budget draft goes before the board next week. Currently, that puts us spot on at a 1% year-over-year increase to the operating budget. So shouldn't end up much more than that, short of the collective bargaining agreements impact. So the taxpayers will low year-over-year tax increase. Our general levy goes back up on the ballot in November, so we start so we have an educational video which will pop up on social media Thursday to update the public on what they're voting on. As far as the bond goes, no significant updates. Our fire station in Edgewood is about a month into construction now, so that's moving along as planned. We'd hope to be out to bid on the station across the street here. Still waiting on one item back for permitting, and then we hope to be out to bid in the next couple of weeks. Last item was at last month's board meeting, which was right after the public safety. Our board did adopt our 5-year strategic plan, so that is available online. And hopefully I'll have some printed copies to give to you by next month. So if you want some late night reading, you can go look at it online if you're really enthused. But anyway, so that's kind of exciting. We haven't had a strategic plan in over a decade, so it's a document to have. So that is all I had, unless there's any questions.
A couple of questions here. So you mentioned everybody's on staff. You didn't lose anybody for any form, whether it be nice. Okay, so we're able to accommodate all of those, and everybody's feeling good. I have had some folks ask.
Feeling good's a relative.
Yeah, true. Yeah, gotcha. As far as any type of lateral moves or anything like that, I know it's not common for that to happen, but do you have any staffing needs? Because I know I've had people reach out to ask what our situation there is because of things happening up north. But
our difficulty right now is that both really an entry level, but even lateral, we have a difficult time making academy training. Number one, we typically or just the amount of time that they have to spend in bunker. That period of time. As of right now, our recruit. Hopefully that will kind of change.
Okay. And then I'll have the same question for the chief when he's done, but I know we have some of the American Rescue Funds coming. Is there anything that you guys need that kind of popped up that is of high demand at this time with everything going on? And I know I was talking, as I mentioned earlier, it seems as though things are getting a little more violent. There's some people that are a little, a little more testy than normal. I don't know if there's anything that you need in regards to that, whether it be mental health or anything in regards to
And not
additional
knowing
funding?
exactly what those funds can be spent on,
Right.
equipment needs. Other thing that
Okay. So by Q1 is the plan to have some form of an addition.
what's budgeted right now would add our set.
Okay.
So right now we have a
Right.
resource paramedic.
Okay.
What would that person do?
So basically, that what we end up dealing with primarily is low acuity calls, 20 to 25%. Typically elderly, they're really trying to take a look at the incident out of the 911. Other big one is just staff that are trained.
All right, move on to public safety. Thank you. Go ahead, Chief Jeter.
All right, thank you. I have the report there before you. I was talking with Councilmember Dole a little bit before the meeting, and last couple of weeks have been very busy. We've had a couple of violent calls. One of them was a carjacking at the Home Depot. It turned out there was a stolen car there. Officers were watching it, and the people saw we were watching it, asked another person for a ride. They jumped in with that person. A couple officers stayed with the stolen car they ditched. A couple more followed this one. They tried to pull him over. They wouldn't stop initially. Then the driver stopped, got out with his arms up, and the officers are trying to figure out what's going on. He's claiming he got carjacked. In the meantime, the car, they slide over and take the car. So we don't know what's going on, so we don't have probable cause at this point to go after the car. Further investigation shows that he did in fact get carjacked. He thought they were giving giving these two a ride. He didn't know what was going on. Although we figure that there was maybe some exchange of possible drugs for a ride. Who knows? But anyhow, they ended up dumping the truck a little bit further. Found one of them walking away from the scene, and another one we found at County Park. The female tried swimming away from us, and thought better of it. It was about 40-some degrees out. Came back, but fully admitted to not stopping because they knew the police couldn't chase him. Told the guy not to stop because the police couldn't stop him. They didn't have probable cause. Put a knife to the guy's throat. Told him not to stop. He did anyhow. So we were lucky on that one. This past weekend, and we also had a shoplift at Target. Somebody pushed a fully loaded cart of merchandise out the emergency doors. And like always, our officers are Johnny on the spot, find the car, attempt to pull it over. It doesn't, just keeps driving, won't stop. They follow it down onto 167 and finally just, we're not going to follow it forever, and just turned off our lights and came back because they knew they didn't have to stop. Then we had a domestic at the View by Vintage Apartments. A 15-year-old female was threatening her mom with a kitchen knife. So our officers showed up, and again, we can't go into the house. Nobody's answering the door. We're trying to listen. We can hear a scuffle going on. We hear glass breaking, so the officers decide there's exigent circumstances, enter the apartment, and as a 15-year-old female is coming down the hallway with a butcher knife in her hand at them, they were able to put a table in front of them to kind of keep her at bay. She immediately starts to slice her own wrist. Quick-thinking officer uses his taser, drops a knife. She's incapacitated. They're able to get her into custody, but rapidly evolving situation there that could have gone horribly wrong. So just a couple of calls there that in the past couple of weeks have really got our attention that, I don't know, full moon or what's going on, but definitely some higher crisis type calls. As far as the stats, the aggravated assaults were back down in the normal range where we only had 2 last month, but still we're trending above where we were at this time last year. Thefts are up a little bit from last year, same with vandalism, property damage, that sort of thing. And overall calls were about 1,000 up. So are at full staff now. As I said, our officer who's at the academy will be coming back to us next week because of the vaccination mandate. So I've been told that if the mandate's lifted and they still have a vacancy, they will inquire if he's able to come. So if not, so he'll be coming back to day shift. So that means we're fully staffed officer-wise. We did have a records clerk announce her resignation this afternoon. So not unexpected. So she's trying to raise a family. So we'll be looking for a new records clerk. And we are holding interviews for our CSO position tomorrow. We had the interviews last week, and we'll be doing the chief's interview, top 3 tomorrow. And as luck would have it, number 1 is our officer who just retired. Number 2 is our bailiff who just retired. And number 3 is, I think he's a probation officer with King County. So we got 3 good candidates to interview. So we should be able to fill that.
So retirement didn't fit well.
Yeah. They're not good at retirement.
Yeah, I can see that.
This one is part-time. The CSO is part-time.
No, it's
right?
No, it's
it is
full-time.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so when they're not doing, their main job is going to be the bailiff.
yeah, okay.
But when they're not doing that,
Yeah.
they're going to help out
Okay.
with
Yeah.
the property room and give us coverage on Friday that we don't currently have.
So funny. But good for you.
Recycle.
Yeah.
Kids in a known quantity, I'll tell you that. So thank you, Kathy, for sitting on the boards last week. I'm glad it went well. And then we've been working with the fire department, kind of a coordinated response to the mental health is really kind of a gray area right for us. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of working our way through Parkinson for his crews. We need to talk our way through it because it is such a gray area. And there's a lot of angst between the police officers who don't want to use force, and the fire department doesn't understand, well, hey, you guys used to be able to do that and we can't anymore. So it's led to great dialogue, and I think we've come to a pretty good plan now. When things happen, we get advisor on scene for both police and fire to kind of have a discussion. If there's a mental health expert there, we have all 3 involved in the discussion and come up with a coordinated plan, help get this person where they need to go. And so far, there's been a few kinks, but I think it's a lot better than when we first started. And I think that we've got a good understanding that communication is going, and we're ultimately getting the people the help that they need, trying to keep everybody safe. So thank you, Chief.
And to kind of go back to that social work, so the person who's in crisis, that's not where that role comes in. But when the person's not in crisis, and we can go have the conversation separately, kind of in a different setting,
Right.
and then we can work on strategies to avoid that call ever happening.
Social workers not going into the crisis
Correct.
situation. That's
Right.
what I was wondering.
That's not our.
And their community paramedic's been a great resource for our community service officer to work after the fact for some of these. We have an elderly gentleman on Old Buckley Highway here who, gosh, he's got to be in his late 80s. Keeps saying that his neighbors are chopping wood and keeping him up to the point of where he armed himself and was going to take care of this problem.
Oh boy.
So and I know Jen has been working diligently with both Veterans Affairs, he's a veteran, and with the family to try to get him help, but he doesn't think he needs any help and he doesn't want any help. But just having that resource has been a godsend for us because it's not really a police problem unless he does take action. So just having those so that people don't fall through the cracks is very helpful.
Would that be used like in the park situation where, like Like,
You'll have to narrow it down.
I don't know, it was in your report. It was
That's
in your
probably the
report.
one at Cedar View Park.
Yes,
Yes,
at Cedar View
yeah.
Park,
Yeah.
like, because you can't really do anything,
Well, she
right?
probably wouldn't have been called. We would have person who's on call.
Mhm.
We also had lucky. So it's lately occurring. Yeah, they just try to do the best they can. Probably 5 or 6 times a day we're getting.
And do you just have to walk away from that situation,
Well,
really, at that point?
we have adopted the policy. We're going to respond and assess,
Right.
and then a lot of times we do.
Yeah.
They say we don't want any help, and we can't detect that there's a crime or they're a danger to themselves or others, then we do. And we've been trying to have a joint response with fire, so in case they do need medical, they're right there instead of us having to have that other layer. But you have to send an engine and a ambulance every time, or
Right,
a
that's a
medic,
lot.
right, to every single call. So it's not real efficient to do that. So, and I get it. It's a huge change in the way they conduct business. Then you have to backfill too, right, when they leave. Yeah. So it's just huge burden on the fire department for this to have a joint response. So we're trying to work our way through that too, to try to be good partners and protect what John's trying to do.
So your inability to respond falls on them to be able to respond in like a crisis medical situation, right? Because you guys can't restrain.
Well, it
Right.
depends. If we have probable cause or they're imminent harm, danger to themselves or others, we can.
Mhm.
But typically, we
That's
don't.
pretty gray.
Yeah, and that's just it. If it's a medical issue, and the medics have the ability to restrain people.
There's an overdose or something
Yeah,
like
and
that.
and then we kind of stand by, and if they start to be violent to the fire crew, then we step in and to protect all parties. But we kind of worked our way through that too, where the medics and the fire folks are the point personnel, and we're kind of in the background to make sure everybody's safe. But again, it's just a huge waste of the chief's resources to send a medic and a fire engine and battalion chief to these types of calls. Doesn't make a ton of.
That pulls them off the line for other things.
Right, yeah, and that's something could be going on where his folks are needed and our folks are needed.
Yeah.
And again, it's taking a lot of time. The other night we had a suicidal subject. Somebody called for what we call a welfare check. We get half a dozen of those a day. That was calling, said he was suicidal in his house. Officers responded, find out his wife is in the house with him, able to talk her out of the house. He's non-communicative to us, but she's saying he's in there. So they do due diligence, trying to make sure that he's okay. Finally get a hold of him. There's dialogue back and forth for the better part of 2 hours to try to get him some help. Try connecting with a crisis negotiator, and he won't talk to him. And then the wife decides she wants to go back in the house. So we can't really stop her from going back in the house, and we've got no crime. She claims he broke things in the house, but we don't have any way to confirm that. So our officers walked her back to the house, and they asked her, can we go in and make sure that you're okay? And they find him passed out on the floor. They do find things broken. She said she does want to be a victim. So now we have probable cause. But long story short, 3 officers spent about 3 hours on that call. We had to call day shift in early because we had calls pending. So and they all had to stay after to do reports. So we spent about 11 hours of overtime for that one call. Hugely expensive and a waste of resources. The community could be doing prevent crime, but instead we're responding to a mental health. A little bit of frustration.
So with this new CSO, that'll make a total of 3 then?
Correct.
Okay. I thought was one part-time at one point?
Yes. Yeah, what happened is we upgraded the part-time to
Yeah,
full-time,
okay.
and we eliminated the bailiff.
Yeah,
So that way
okay.
we would have full-time coverage in the court. We were not having good luck in finding somebody part-time for the
That's
bailiff
right. Okay.
position.
Yeah, that's right.
So we knew we had that part-time need on my side of the house and full-time, just short of full-time need on the court side, so it made sense.
And then do you have any needs that you can think of, Chief? I know, like I said, the funding will be
We got
real quick.
6 o'clock to when the other meeting
Yeah.
started.
Yeah, you're gonna get your,
Right,
your,
maybe-
your
maybe-
allocation there.
Maybe your top one or top two.
Well, I talked to John and Sherry about there's a lot that we covered under the cap.
Okay.
Yeah, well, you will see the body cams coming
Yeah.
forward tonight. We talked about that
Yeah.
last month. I would
Yeah.
say that's probably our biggest. As we move forward, I would like to look at staffing and address staffing, because I think that's going to be a big issue moving forward, as we are having more and more two-person type calls, and our minimum staffing is 2. So it's probably wise to take a look at that in the next, especially the more we expand and we add multifamily. The more we increase our business district, that expands our calls and that sort of thing. We're just getting busier up here, and the types of calls that we're responding to escalating. We're getting a lot of motor vehicle Fs too, which we never had before. Now those seem to be rising quite heavily too.
Yeah, your report was, there was a lot more on their violent crimes, DUI stuff, collisions, aggravated assaults, that, I mean, just in the last report cycle that I could see accelerating
Yeah, and
quickly over the last, 3 report cycles.
Right, and it's not just Bonney Lake, it's everywhere, it's
Right.
experienced.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, business and action items. Resolution 2986, the Washington Traffic Safety Commission Interagency Agreement.
Thank you. This is our annual agreement with the Traffic Safety Commission to get reimbursed for traffic safety emphasis patrols, DUI patrols, speed patrols, seatbelt enforcement, distracted driving, and that sort of thing throughout the fiscal year, their fiscal year, October 1 to September 3rd. Traffic safety. There isn't, usually we get a pot of money. This year there's just or the last 2 years actually, there's been a pot for the county, and we just submit for reimbursement. Monitor how much is left in there, so you know before you schedule something, you know how much.
What do you mean, like you're scheduling a special shift to do this type of task
Correct.
focused?
Yeah, so you take them out of patrol so they can focus on whatever we're doing, whether it's Y emphasis, speed emphasis, traffic, or seatbelt emphasis, distracted driving, something like that, so they don't have to respond to patrol calls. Strictly funded by traffic safety on over.
And how does that work now that we can't pull people over?
We can pull
And
them
other
over.
things like
Yeah,
that,
we
how
can pull
does-
them over if they choose not to stop.
Right, so how can you enforce like a seatbelt law or a driving with a cell phone if they're like,
You can't.
you can't, okay, is this so we're clear? It kind of seems,
Citizens will get punished, unfortunately.
yes, and so I kind of, it's almost like a waste at that point. I'm not saying it's a waste of money, I'm saying it's frustrating because really it's not going to do anything, because the people who will pull over are probably nice people who are just not paying attention versus people who actually are doing something wrong intentionally
The ones that
and
are
will just keep driving.
Right.
Yeah, I will say in regards, it was, when they do these, they're pretty impactful. I mean, you recognize something's going on. There's a lot of people being pulled over, that do stop. So it does make people a little bit aware. I think that distracted driving when you guys did, what was it, 5-6 months ago or something like that, was super. I had people call me saying, what's going on? What's, and I was like, oh, well, this is what's happening. But it did seem to get everybody thinking, hey, I need to slow down, or I need to be thoughtful, or I need to get off my phone, because when you take that year and not really enforce a lot of that, or, there's a little bit of leeway there. I had more people ask me about things going on in this, like speeding in neighborhoods. And I think even these emphasis will at least help that. People will recognize, oh, they're out and they are enforcing things and they are pulling people over, even though you may have some that just keep driving.
I wonder, have you heard any complaints in regards to this specified task force in regards to the school issues with the backups, side roads from elementary schools and junior highs, and roads being blocked for
every school zone.
EMS and fire and all the things that you can't get through those zones anymore? Would this
Pick up and
task force
drop
be
off.
able to work on that issue at all? No.
This is strictly. Wouldn't be able to mitigate traffic and direct traffic. That's basically what you'd have to have, is probably 3 or 4 officers at every school zone to manually direct traffic.
It's
which
bad.
Obviously, I've heard the high school and junior high is backed up all the way to South Prairie Road and onto South Prairie Road.
Victor Falls Elementary, all the way back,
Emerald
both
Hill,
directions.
Lonnie Lake
Yeah.
Elementary, we're getting people that are going into the opposing lane because they don't want to wait.
Yep.
And
They go around. They try to cut
it's-
traffic.
It's
About
been
100.
a huge mess because of the bus drivers.
Yes.
And them canceling.
Yes. I was just wondering. I was like, can we use that?
Be nice.
Not at all targeted enforcement of some kind.
This is on your consent.
Okay.
This is, yes.
This one.
Yeah. So it's just renewing what we've done in the past.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
All right, next up is the discussion, add additional software to city's digital ink for a contract. Judge Daniels, if she's on.
Judge Daniels, are you there?
I am here. Hello, everybody. Kathy has prepared the presentation, and so I'm going to defer to her. I'm just here.
All right, thank you.
She's gone now.
Well, okay, so if you recall and everything else, and that's back in October last year and everything else, and that is that we purchased the city's digital software and everything else for archiving. And so when they started working with the program and getting everything all set up, we found out and everything else that we didn't have the GIS integration piece for it, which basically transfers the information in our current system that we use, which is called Judicial Information System, over into the Laserfish site. So the programmer for Laserfish and everything else tried to set it up and everything else and create a document and everything else for us to manually have to enter every single case into Laserfish, which turns around then and causes margin for errors and now they have the consistency with the way everything is entered and stuff. So we reached back out to Cities Digital and asked them what the cost would be to add this integration piece. And on the quote that they provided, the software program itself is $7,500. And then they have what's called the silver package, which that is the technology side of it. Everything else was setting up the program, includes all of the training. We currently have almost 19 hours left under the current silver package that we have. And they said that between adding the additional 20 hours and what we have and everything else is that they should be able to get the GIS integration program up and going, and including the training for the staff and everything else to show walk us through the steps on how to transfer everything over. This also adds the piece for the judge in the courtroom. Instead of her having to have the physical file, is that then it'll create a link for her to be able to just open up the documents right there on her screen, be able to view all of the forms there, and then we can do away with having physical. So.
And Kathy, you do have sufficient funds in the.
We have the sufficient funds. Our budget balance amount was $58,000, and we currently have $28,000, so which would leave us about $14,000 in the budget for this year.
Okay.
Would also decrease the staff time and everything else, and we're having to make those manual.
How much staff time would you think, if you were to have to put it manually in, how much time would that
Well,
take?
you have to archive the cases over from with the current program, OPER, which is what we're using in the courtroom now, so that we're not having to have paper forms anymore. They have to be archived over, and then the clerk has to open up the Laserfish, download those forms, open it up, create. So each case, probably, depending on if there's nothing in there, because there's nothing in the database, creating a file, creating a library. And when you've never had the person in there and you've got 60-some cases on a calendar, it's an awful lot of staff time following court, which is what we had originally purchased the Laserfish for, was to decrease staff time to let them be able to have more time to work efficiently.
And you said it was, did you give me the cost breakdown again? Because I think I saw it in here. Didn't it say like 68,000? Yeah, well, thank you.
So the program itself is $7,500.
Right.
And then the silver package for 20 hours is $3,800. And then there's the annual cost of $1,500. And they estimated, based off of this quote, which was on 9/27, that there would be about another $300 for the annual maintenance fee for the rest of this year, which that number will go down depending on when and if this is approved to move forward and stuff. So we would just have the annual increase. And then we're also too are working on updating the Eatonville contract. So this would, that we would be asking them to try to help us maintain on some of those annual costs.
This is a one-time transfer over from the original system to the new system. And then a continued maintenance fee.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Versus now they're pulling old cases one at a time and
Right.
manually entering them in
Yeah,
the new
so
system.
we would turn around and then when we get done with the OCAR, we archive it and it transfers it over. They have like, and I got some screenshots here which probably wouldn't make much sense. They do like a screen scraping in the GIS that'll populate the information from GIS, which is their name, their case number. It's a criminal traffic, criminal non-traffic, and infraction, all of their personal identifiers and everything else, and it creates a database for that person. And then the judges, and then it assigns, it'll log that case number to that person, so that when she's in the courtroom, then later, she'll be able to just click on that case number and it'll open up all the documents in their system.
And where is all that information stored now? I mean, like, do we house it or do we purchase a space someplace else that we're housing all
I
that
think that's part
information?
of the annual maintenance and everything else is securing the spacing.
That they're hosting it.
Yes. they're
Laser,
hosting
what did you call it?
Laserfish,
Laser.
Cities Digital.
But currently, Kathy, it's just on the city's internal servers.
Yes,
So now we're moving all of that from
So-
internal servers to external
right.
servers?
It'll go there once we can start with you. Yes,
Okay, it's not there now.
it's not there now, but it will go there. And then they'll maintain it and everything else.
And then with this, we should be paperless once that's done, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I have a question. And you said this is already in the budget, essentially. I mean, it's something we
The
can
funds are
take out.
available.
Yeah, the funds are, it was not
the funds are-
identified in the
it
budget, but
wasn't
the
in the
funds are.
budget.
The funds are there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have the funds available.
And is the staff on board with this idea? This is something
Yes,
that they
yes,
want?
because they found the other was trying to use them. We were going to try to set up additional training and that's through with the programmer instead of the trainer, because all they want to do was how to create all of this stuff, and here's what. And so we were going to have a programmer to have it. This would be more efficient.
I would be in favor of this. I think it's important that the transfers over properly. As good as we are, we can make mistakes in re-entering that data. And then if I remember correctly, when we sat in with Maylee a couple times, she talked about the importance of having those electronic, not having to go to the paper, not having to spend time. And it was easier for them to relate back to certain cases or certain situations. So I know there's a cost there, but I'd definitely be in favor of making this happen.
So I know this is a discussion item right now. What's the next step, sort of?
Next step would be if you approved it, moving on to a future council agenda.
Yeah.
We just have to create it to a resolution. Bring it forward then.
Okay. Yeah.
I think you already crafted, the resolution was in the packet.
Yeah.
But it's not
Yeah.
numbered.
Oh, but it's
Right.
not numbered, yeah, we'd have. to
Right,
do
it
a
has to be
resolution.
numbered and everything else, and Sadie said to wait until after the discussion
Right.
and she'll assign it
Okay.
an agenda building resolution.
So if the committee wanted to move it forward, it would be that October 26th. Question would be consent.
I just wonder about the long-term privacy protections of people's data going from an in-house internal server of a government entity to a private entity that could be subject to compromise, and how assuring that those private informations are not compromised on a
That's the question.
consumer-based
Let me
system.
verify that piece.
And that's my concern.
That's how and everything else. I can verify with. I know that this is a company that's used by Retton and some other courts and everything. And the laser. basically going to. That's where
Right.
the recommendation. That's how we ended up with late. For the purchase.
Kind of that public-private partnership essentially,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Issues with?
Yeah,
With that?
I'm just
Okay.
wondering.
No, that's
My
good.
only,
No,
that's
it's a
my
good
only,
question.
that's my question.
It is a
I'm,
good question.
you know, I'm a
absolutely,
big
for sure.
privacy advocate and
Yes.
making sure that people's data are
And that's-
protected.
Right, that's
And-
with ours. too.
And so that that switch, that transfer, in-house, ex-house, and how does that work? That, you know, when everything is digital, it can be compromised. What are we doing to protect privacy in their criminal record?
And this installs the GIS integration is on our computer.
Oh,
So
okay.
they'll be stored on ours.
Wait,
So
huh?
it's like, hold on just a minute. I might be, let's see. Oh, this is just a program that's installed on the computer. Okay. I will verify that question with Chuck. Chuck knows that question, that answer.
Yeah,
To
you
that.
know if it has to be like any sort of
Yes,
information.
right. They
So I
can't
would
release it.
imagine that yours does
It
too,
would
which
have to
adds
be
an
too,
extra
right.
layer
Layer
of
of
security.
It has the extra light, right.
So I would imagine it's the same as for us, since it's criminal justice,
Mm-hmm.
so that they take an extra step, even though it's in out, they take
Right.
extras because it has to comply with federal guidelines to be able to be stored because of the sensitivity of the,
Right.
so.
And that would be that would be my concern.
Yeah,
making
if it,
sure
if it
that-
is CJIS
And yes, and
compliant,
everything else with us now for on our port stuff and everything else, is that we are on an inside link to the city extranet. So we have that extra layer when it enters the city, have a direct link to AOC through for the GIS and the JAPs and stuff. So that when we log in, it's all going through. When nobody can get into that information. So we have, yeah, so sometimes and everything else, and then when the city goes down or AOC goes down, oh, okay, whose site is it? Is it the city site or is it AOC site?
Okay,
But
thank
yeah,
you.
Thank you for that, Greg.
Kathy could look into that and email the committee
Yeah.
members there.
I'll follow up with checking to get to you. I have that feedback.
I don't have a problem with it moving forward. Do you have a problem moving forward with
No.
it? As long as
Yeah, I just
it's
wanted to clarify where that
compliant
goes.
and whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
The 26th?
yeah, I think
Consent agenda?
that's fine.
Or not?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, 26 consent.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next thing, approval of meeting notes. Okay, you guys have any issues?
Look
No?
good.
Okay,
Yeah.
approved. Open committee discussion. Anybody have anything?
No.
I wanted to thank Chief Parkinson for answering all my questions.
Yeah.
I was able to relay that information back to the person who contacted me and told them that you were open and willing to discuss with them personally, and I think that was encouraging to them, and so thank you for being open and available to answer my questions for them.
You guys know where to find me?
So, thank you.
All right, well, if nothing else, we'll be adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Leslie, I feel like I haven't seen you in like a million
I
years.
know.
So what's your next after the first of the year?
I wasn't here last
You don't
meeting.
go
I
New
was out
Year's
of
or what?
town.
Make
Yeah.
a book right now.
March, I think back to Belfair. Fort Warden or vice versa. That's as far as we've got out so far. About you.
Yeah, so February, so President's Day, we've got Fort Ward that weekend.
I caught someone
We had to
dropping
cancel
off
last year,
Selena
except
as
for the
surprise
snow.
for
Oh,
me
yeah, that's
earlier.
right.
I didn't feel like
Okay,
going.
what are you doing?
I was doing a birthday surprise for my friend, and they have
And then I
security
told you,
cameras, and I was like, I can't even
So then
surprise
we
you
had
because I
to
walk
have
around your
mom
corner, and you're like,
I don't think I have
No, we had
anything
a-
until
we
we
had a
have like
huge-